In front of an imposing castle shrouded by dark clouds, the famed heroes' party is prepared to raid the structure. With resolve in their hearts, the party advances, determined to defeat the demon lord and end his reign. The massive doors of the castle creak open, revealing countless red eyes glowing. As the heroes step inside, waiting for them is not the demon lord, but one of his powerful lackeys, Yoki, who stands in their way. Makana attacks without hesitation, launching a blazing red fireball. The spell dissipates and Yoki belittles the attack. Raven charges next, swinging his sword. Yoki counters with a powerful kick that sends him flying. Yuga steps forward, supported by Cecilia, who helps power his attack. He unleashes a thunderous strike, but Yoki counters it and easily overwhelms the attack with his own magic. The heroes take a direct hit, and all of them eventually lose consciousness. A bright yellow-orange light gathers in his hand as he begins absorbing their remaining energy. His actions pause when his gaze lands on Cecilia. Her unconscious expression, which appears as if sleeping, captivates him. Lost in thought, he fails to notice the arrival of his subordinates until they loudly announce themselves. They bluntly ask whether they should finish off the heroes and also tease him for ogling one of the girls. Rather than killing them, he orders the heroes to be thrown outside near a nearby human village. Though his subordinates complain and warn him that he could be reprimanded again for not killing the heroes, they follow his command. 1 month later, Yoki faces the demon lord and his subordinate, Zykill. Zykill voices his displeasure since, despite the heroes' party's repeated defeats, they still keep challenging Yoki. The demon lord, annoyed with the heroes' party, tells Yoki that he will have his subordinates kill them off since Yoki seems unwilling to do it. Knowing his own subordinates won't be able to stand against the heroes, Yoki insists on taking care of the problem since he also worries about Cecilia's safety. As he leaves the throne room, Yoki reflects on his actions. He knows that sparing the heroes may endanger their lives in the future. Yet he also believes that they possess the potential to defeat the demon lord. With each passing day, the world inches closer to falling under demonic rule. On their next encounter, the heroes launch a coordinated attack. Raven and Yuga strike together, attempting to overwhelm Yoki with sheer force, but Yoki throws them off toward a wall, dealing significant damage. Makana raises her staff and fires a barrage of magic attacks. The spells strike Yoki directly, yet they fail to leave even a scratch. Yoki notices that Cecilia has moved to heal the wounded. Yoki watches her movements closely, captivated once again by her beauty. Despite their recovery, he laughs, mocking their efforts and warning them that they will only be swallowed by darkness again. Yuga prepares another attack, asking Cecilia for support. As he moves to strike Yoki, a bright light and smoke signal that the attack is connected. But as the smoke clears, Yoki stands unharmed. Yuga is shocked because it is supposed to be their party's destiny to defeat the demon lord. Seeing the party's determination, Yoki proposes a negotiation. He offers to let the heroes pass if they leave Cecilia behind, gesturing to her. Yuga immediately refuses, but Makana urges him to think of the world's salvation, as it holds more importance than a single person. Yuga is still hesitant to abandon a party mate, but Cecilia tells him to accept the offer, insisting she will be fine. With hesitation, Yuga decides to take Yoki's offer, and the heroes proceed to the demon lord's room. Left alone, Cecilia confronts Yoki, demanding to know why he needed her to stay. Yoki's expression changes to a timid one, but Cecilia decides to attack him. Yoki is shocked by her hostility, as her attack just bounces off him. To calm her down, he raises his hand, calling for a pause, and introduces himself. He reveals that he has no intention of killing her. Cecilia is confused by his words, but cautiously asks him what he means. Taking a deep breath, he confesses that he fell in love with her at first sight and would like to go out with her. Cecilia stands frozen in shock before bowing her head and apologizing, refusing his proposal. Crushed, Yoki lowers his defenses and falls to the ground, declaring that he should just die now. Cecilia prepares another attack, but Yoki makes no attempt to resist, which makes Cecilia uneasy, so she demands to know his reason. Yoki explains that her rejection means he no longer has a reason to live. If he were to be left alive, he would still be stuck in the castle and can only leave if he has orders to attack human settlements, which he doesn't want to do. Cecilia is puzzled because demons are supposed to find joy in bringing terror to humans. Yoki explains that he is actually a human from a different dimension, but was reincarnated into this demonic body. Though he possesses the power to defeat the demon lord, doing so would force him to inherit the title. Yoki shares that living as a lackey under the demon lord felt isolated and purposeless. He has spent his days alone. Meeting Cecilia changed everything. For the first time since becoming a demon, he felt alive. Moved by his words, Cecilia urges him to live and use his power for good. She offers him a chance to leave the castle and join the outside world. After the demon lord's defeat, the kingdom of Clarinus erupts in celebration. King Darts declares a 3-day celebration for a victory memorial day to properly celebrate the heroes' party's success. Just outside the kingdom's walls, Yoki prepares to fit in and breaks his horn. Meanwhile, the heroes' party is in a parade. Mikana shares her joy at their success with Yuga. Yuga credits their victory to Cecilia, who gives him a nervous smile. Seeing this interaction, Mikana feels a little jealous. Yoki finally enters town and registers at the Adventurers Guild, disguising himself as a human. Clayman is manning the reception desk and struggles to find the form Yoki needs. He eventually finds it and shows Yoki's guild card, indicating Yoki is at F rank. He explains the ranking system and how it usually takes a month to move up a rank. Before handing Yoki his card, Clayman emphasizes keeping the guild cards safe, since it is a hassle to reissue, especially in the next 3 days since a festival is ongoing. He complains that they are currently understaffed and does not want to do the work himself. This makes Yoki think Clayman is lazy. He finally hands Yoki the card and introduces himself. At the Kingdom's Inn, Yoki checks his earnings for the day and notes that he has made a lot of money. His new goal is to increase his cash and rank, and once he has a stable life, confess to Cecilia again. He laughs maniacally in glee, determined to make their love work. In a week, rumors circulate about a person who has been crazily climbing up the ranks. Yoki lazily enters the guild and hands Clayman a bunch of quests he would like to take. Clayman is annoyed that Yoki always makes him do the paperwork and complains that he should approach the female receptionist instead. Yoki refuses, saying he has grown attached to Clayman and would rather talk to him since he surprisingly works fast. Due to his impressive rise in the rank ladder, Clayman starts interrogating Yoki about his identity. Looking away, Yoki counters that he is only a normal novice adventurer. Clayman mentions that it is odd since Yoki ranked up from F to D in a mere week. Despite this, Clayman tells Yoki that he investigated the matter and is sure Yoki did not cheat. Their conversation is cut short by a cloaked figure who requests that Yoki's quests be cancelled. Both Yoki and Clayman recognize her as Cecilia, and Cecilia shushes Clayman since he almost revealed her identity. Cecilia has important matters to discuss with Yoki and invites him to her family estate so they can talk. They ride a coach to her estate, where 2 guards are eagerly awaiting Cecilia's return. One guard is surprised when Yoki is the first to exit the coach, so he immediately threatens him. Cecilia comes to Yoki's defense, saying that he is her friend. However, Yoki is feeling a bit disappointed since he was just labeled as a friend. In the estate's sitting room over warm cups of tea, Cecilia apologizes for not being able to meet Yoki earlier, which Yoki says is fine since he is busy being an adventurer. Yoki is even surprised by how Cecilia was able to find him. Cecilia explains that it wasn't hard since he is currently the talk of the town for ranking up so fast. This causes a smug grin to form on Yoki's face. However, Cecilia then tells him to quit the Adventurers Guild. This shocks Yoki, but Cecilia continues by saying that even if the Demon Lord is gone, other threats are emerging. She predicts the next one might be a war between nations. The signs of a possible war are already showing up with the hero receiving a lot of engagement offers. Status, money, and marriage are ways many nations may use as resources at their disposal to gather military strength and manpower. Since Yoki ranked up unbelievably faster than most people, he may become an S-rank adventurer, which will make him attractive to be used by nations to conquer the world. Cecilia also worries that his demonic powers might be discovered, which people might find a threat, and they would try to kill him. Since she is asking him to quit, Yoki will have a problem making a living. So Cecilia proposes hiring him personally, but admits she doesn't make enough to pay him the money an S-rank adventurer would earn. However, Cecilia bows and promises to do what she can as long as he accepts her offer. She even adds that this is for the sake of the country's peace. Yoki is shocked but recovers and declares that he will never serve another country, even if they were to throw beautiful women for him to marry. Confidently, he says that he only has eyes for Cecilia. This earns a laugh, and Cecilia feels relief since she has nothing to worry about. She allows Yoki to stay with the Adventurers Guild with the promise that he is to stay low-key. Cecilia's mother, Celia, soon arrives and joins their discussion. Celia apologizes on behalf of their rude guards and assures Yoki that they will be punished by her maid, Sophia. Yoki believes the guards won't repent for getting scolded, but is shocked when Sophia asks Celia how many bones she should break. Getting to the point of the matter of her appearance, Celia asks Sophia to leave the room and asks Cecilia if she has already shared with Yoki that she received a lot of engagement offers, even one coming from Yuga. Irritated with this knowledge, Yoki kicks up a fuss and Cecilia calms him down. She shares that she turned down all offers, including the heroes. Celia figures out that Yoki also likes her daughter. Embarrassed to be found out, Yoki scratches his head. Celia asks him if he's interested in marrying Cecilia. Caught off guard, Yoki looks at Cecilia and sees her downcast eyes. He apologizes, saying that he will only confess again to Cecilia once he gets a stable life through his adventuring quests and wants to respect Cecilia's wishes. Celia puts on an annoyed expression for not accepting an offer, but eases her expression and tells him that he has passed since there was no way she was going to give Cecilia so easily. She moves to leave and tells Yoki to get along with Cecilia, and that he is always welcome in their home. Yoki and Cecilia go outside to chat a little. Yoki wonders if he truly left a good first impression since it is important for him because he met Cecilia's family. Yoki then requests if he can call Cecilia by her name. Cecilia agrees and wants to call Yoki by his name as well. Yoki shouts in joy since this means his first real progress with his relationship with Cecilia. A red streak of light emerges from the forest. A monster, a cockatrice, launches several attacks at Yoki. He successfully evades deep into the forest, effortlessly stepping back from each powerful attack. The cockatrice screams, chasing after him to an open area. Yoki prepares a spell just as the cockatrice is about to attack. Before the cockatrice attacks, Yoki casts his spell, defeating it. Yoki successfully collects the monster's feathers, completing the quest. He feels proud of himself because the quest should have taken a week, but he only needed a day to do it. Suddenly, Yoki gets attacked by his old comrades since they do not recognize him. He calls out to them and Seek is the first to recognize that he is Yoki. They express their relief because they thought he was an adventurer on a hunt. Yoki doesn't have the time to provide answers when Duke goes straight to asking him questions about his whereabouts and human-like appearance. Yoki and Seek calm Duke down while Happiness calmly asks for an explanation. Yoki proudly explains that he had confessed to Cecilia, but had gotten rejected. Now he chooses to live his life as a human adventurer. After he recounts his events, he advises his previous subordinates to lead the life they want. His subordinates refuse, adamant about following him and wanting to know about Cecilia. Yoki scratches his head, worried about their identities getting exposed. The three counter that if Yoki can adapt, then they can too. Seeing no way out, Yoki resigns himself to their wishes and tells them to prepare. Yoki brings his subordinates to Cecilia's estate. Instead of a welcome, Cecilia scolds Yoki for plucking Happiness feathers for a human disguise. Yoki kneels, asking for forgiveness. Over tea, Cecilia finds out that her three new guests were former subordinates of Yoki. Duke explains that they are a Dullahan, Harpy, and Pixie, respectively. Duke wants to remove his head, but they had already attached his helmet and armor so it won't fall off. Yoki complains about Duke's chattiness since Dullahans don't talk as much. Duke calmly tells them that his love for talking is originally Yoki's fault. He tells Cecilia that Yoki used to be hard to talk to. Even Zaichir finds Yoki troublesome since he did not want to follow orders and remained in his room. When Duke attempted to forcibly correct Yoki's behavior, his head was thrown and screamed at. Since then, he had greatly admired Yoki. Cecilia is honestly surprised at their backstories as Duke shares that Happiness and Seek also have the same respect for Yoki. However, when he turns to look for them, he notices that they are gone. Yoki wonders if the two went inside the manor, which could spell trouble for them if their identities are exposed. The three of them begin searching the manor's grounds. They cross paths with Celia, with Seek sleeping on her lap. Yoki admits that Seek is his friend and asks if Celia finds him a bother. Celia dispels his worries, saying that she loves kids and wanted to take care of him once he got tired from playing. Cecilia asks Celia about Happiness' whereabouts. Thinking about it, she recalls that Happiness was taken away by Sophia. Inside the manor, Sophia teaches Happiness to curtsy in a maid uniform. Yoki and the rest rush in and find out that Happiness is now employed as the new maid. Yoki asks why Happiness is wearing a maid outfit in the first place, since she is Yoki's friend and a guest. Sophia turns to Happiness for an explanation, which she clears with a short answer. Sophia deeply apologizes for the confusion. When Yoki asks Happiness to change her clothes, Happiness refuses and expresses her interest in the job. Her reply puzzles the whole group, but seeing the determination in Happiness' eyes, Sophia invites her for a tour of the servants' quarters. With Happiness settled at Cecilia's manor, her old group and Yoki bid her goodbye. While they are sad, they are also happy that Happiness has found her calling, and the fact that they can visit her puts them at ease. While the others express their joy, Celia whispers to Yoki that Cecilia barely has time to rest. She shares that she'll have her daughter take the day off tomorrow, asking Yoki to spend time with her. The next day, Yoki waits outside the inn where he stays. A carriage arrives shortly, and the door opens to reveal Cecilia in casual clothes, a different outfit from her usual. Mesmerized, Yoki compliments Cecilia's glasses, which she uses as a disguise, hiding her identity as a member of the hero's party. Yoki realizes she lives a tough celebrity life. Cecilia apologizes for dragging Yoki along, which he casually brushes off, promising her a great experience. Cecilia giggles at this, looking forward to the day. They walk beside each other in town. A sign for a new cake offering catches Cecilia's attention. They peer inside a cafe, marveling over the cute cakes on display. Cecilia suggests having tea time there later, and Yoki agrees. They go to a flower shop next, where Cecilia marvels over the pretty roses. In his head, Yoki calls her the prettier one. Cecilia pets a stray cat-like creature next, which meows in delight. In her excitement, Cecilia meows back at it in return. Yoki finds this encounter cute, screaming dramatically. At a dress shop, Cecilia tries on a red dress and tentatively asks how she looks. Yoki gives it a thumbs up of approval. After a string of activities, Cecilia remarks that her fatigue from work has faded away. He spots an accessories store and invites Cecilia to check it out. Yuga sees Cecilia from afar and tries to call out to her. McKenna stops him because he might give himself away. Cecilia manages to catch her name and sees them, and Yuga happily approaches her, completely ignoring Yoki in the process. He tells Cecilia that they are also out and about on their day off and were hoping to have a fun time in town. He excitedly invites her to join them. Cecilia declines the invite since she was with Yoki, introducing him as a friend. Yuga stares at him, wondering if he has met Yoki before. A nervous Yoki says no, and Cecilia suspiciously hums in agreement. Yuga decides to include Yoki in the group and drags an unwilling Cecilia to the shop since he noticed she was eyeing it earlier. This saddens Yoki and pisses off McKenna, since it is the first time she has had a date with Yuga since Cecilia always has attention. She turns to Yoki, hoping he is getting along well with Cecilia on their own date. McKenna wishes him good luck, and possibly with Yoki around, Yuga will finally give up on Cecilia. Yoki initially thinks McKenna is a good person, but after being repeatedly called plain-faced, he changes his mind. Looking at the hero's party members, Yoki remembers that Cecilia turned down Yuga's marriage offer. Despite this, Yoki wonders if Yuga is still trying his chances with Cecilia. Yoki rejoins Cecilia, asking if she found anything she likes. Cecilia apologizes for leaving him behind. Since they are in an accessories store, Yoki decides to buy Cecilia a gift as a thank you for helping him and his friends. Overhearing this, Yuga intrudes by announcing he will get both Cecilia and McKenna a gift. Yoki looks at him strangely and wonders if Yuga is competing with him. Yoki sees a blue crystal necklace as a potential gift, which Cecilia finds pretty. Not wanting to lose, Yuga grabs the most expensive hair accessory. He forcibly removes Cecilia's disguise, revealing her identity to the other customers. When people recognize her and the other heroes, they crowd around the hero's party members. They are swept away to another location, except for Yoki. When Yoki recovers, he quickly looks for Cecilia. Yoki sees Raven being crowded by a bunch of girls. He looks familiar to Yoki, but he has trouble recognizing who he is. A man notices his confusion and explains that Raven used to be part of the hero's party. Seeing that he looks troubled, Yoki decides to divert the girl's attention by saying Yuga just passed by. He quickly takes Raven to a secluded alley, and Raven looks for something to give him. Yoki makes a move to leave, but Raven tells him to wait, revealing his childlike voice. Yoki finds out the reason for Raven's quiet nature and respects his secret, since Yoki has his own. Raven stops Yoki from leaving again, asking him to be his friend, since Yoki is one of the few people who does not laugh at him. Realizing Raven's honest effort, Yoki agrees, shaking his hand. He bids Raven a quick goodbye. At a loss, Yoki and Cecilia realize the other must have gone home. Cecilia hears a lost boy crying for his mom. Cecilia approaches him and heals his scraped knee. This does not stop the boy from crying. His ruckus draws the attention of Yoki, who decides to cheer the boy up by comically declaring it his new mission to find the boy's mother. This makes Cecilia smile, but she quickly scolds him. The kid bursts into laughter because he finds it funny that a grown man can be scolded. After calming down, the two begin searching for the boy's mother. Yoki advises Cecilia to go home in case her disguise ends up getting blown again, but Cecilia tells him not to worry, saying they'll figure it out when it happens. When Yoki isn't facing her, she lets out a sneeze. Meanwhile, Yuga drags McKenna on a search for Cecilia. McKenna asks him to stop since he might draw attention again and Cecilia may have gone home. Yuga gets mad and scolds McKenna since she makes it seem like she doesn't care about Cecilia. He runs off, unaware he left a sad McKenna behind. Yuga sees Cecilia and Yoki together, finally reuniting the kid with his mother. He smiles and looks behind for McKenna, only to see she is nowhere to be found. The next day, Yoki visits Cecilia only for Celia to inform him that Cecilia has fallen ill. As much as Yoki blames himself, Celia says that Yuga contributed to most of Cecilia's fatigue. He even tried to visit her, but Sophia had managed to fight him off. Yoki looks at Sophia uneasily, wondering how scary she really is. Seeing that Yoki is worried, Celia allows him to visit Cecilia. Sophia knocks on the door to inform Cecilia that Yoki is here to visit. He peeks a little before entering the door, charmed at the sight of Cecilia's room. His gaze spots her on the bed, and she apologizes for being sick. He sits beside her on a stool, and Yoki apologizes for ruining her day off, which Cecilia brushes off casually. Still, Yoki admits he made her visit many places. Cecilia relents, saying if it is Yoki's fault, he should go out with her again on her next day off. Seeing the promise of another date, Yoki dramatically accepts, and his outrageous speech makes them both laugh. Sophia barges in and gives Yoki a headlock after the laugh escalates into a cough. Sophia literally throws him out, and Happiness closes the manor doors after him, calling it useless to fight Sophia. As he walks away from the manor, he sees Raven, who is equally surprised to see him. Seeing this as a golden opportunity, Raven decides to ask for advice, admitting that he's actually interested in someone who likes his voice. Seeing how bashful he has gotten, Yoki can't help but compare Raven to a boy going through puberty. He tells Raven to have more confidence because he has a lot of good qualities and is even a hero. Raven smiles and agrees, deciding it's time to confess his feelings. It takes a moment for Yoki to realize that Raven is possibly here to confess to Cecilia. After realizing that Raven is a potential rival, Yoki panics. He begins imagining all the moments they can develop a romantic relationship. Before Yoki can even confirm his theory, a dispirited Raven returns. Yoki takes one look and thinks Raven must have been rejected. Yoki returns to Cecilia's home to check on her, but his concern only makes Sophia suspicious since they were just together. Yoki asks about Raven's visit and Sophia confirms that Raven did come by. She adds that Raven was asking to see Happiness, much to Yoki's surprise. Yoki catches Happiness sweeping the walkway outside the house. He asks if Raven came to see her, then quickly adds that Raven is his friend, earning a reaction from Happiness. Yoki asks if Raven confessed and what her reply was. Happiness answers bluntly that it's impossible. Yoki understands that the harsh response is what caused Raven to be so disheartened, but he's aware he cannot force Happiness to like him. Instead of answering, Happiness runs away from him. Back at the inn, Yoki gathers Seek and Duke to talk about Happiness and Raven, making Seek remember him as the human who kept losing to Yoki. Duke questions Yoki for letting a human get close to Happiness, but Yoki denies even trying to set them up. Duke insists that even if a human loves her, Happiness won't receive it well, because she's a harpy and humans hunted her race for their feathers. Duke saved her, and that's how she ended up joining the Demon Lord's army. Seek counters that Happiness might not completely hate humans if she chose to work at Cecilia's manor. Yoki understands Duke's concern, but he says Raven isn't a bad guy, though Duke still doesn't look convinced. The next day, Yoki visits the Adventurer Guild, but he can't find Clayman anywhere. One of the receptionists asks if he's looking for the Vice Guild Master. Yoki pauses and asks who that is, only to realize it's Clayman's official title. The news surprises him since Yoki always thought Clayman was a slacker, but Clayman actually holds an important position. When Yoki asks where Clayman is, the receptionist whispers that he is at the hospital, but that information needs to be kept a secret for the sake of the guild's dignity. Yoki drops by the hospital and finds Clayman covered in bandages. Clayman admits he made his wife angry. Their wedding anniversary was the other day, and he spent the whole day trying to pick a gift, but couldn't settle on anything, so he got kicked out of the shop and didn't even make it to dinner. His wife thought he forgot the anniversary completely. He received a beating from her which landed him in the hospital, and Yoki now understands why the guild wanted to keep it a secret. Yoki comments that Clayman's wife must be strong. Clayman says they both used to be A-rank adventurers, and they even worked as a team for high-level commissions. People gave them the nickname Invincible Couple of Apathy, but Yoki thinks the nickname is lame. Yoki offers to heal him, but Clayman refuses. He says he wants to stay injured so his wife can nurse him back to health. Then Sophia walks in and Yoki is surprised that she's there to visit Clayman. Clayman greets her enthusiastically, which earns him a kick from Sophia. Clayman comments that he can see under her skirt, and Sophia says she doesn't mind because she is his wife. Yoki looks at her in admiration for how confident she is in announcing that she is married to Clayman. Sophia bows to Yoki and thanks him for visiting. Yoki asks about Cecilia, and Sophia says Cecilia's fever has already gone down and she's doing much better. Sophia also shares that Cecilia is out on business. Yoki then asks Sophia if girls really care about presents. Sophia's aura turns grim and she asks if her husband said something. Yoki panics, avoids the question, and remembers the last time he wanted to give Cecilia a gift. He explains that he had thought about getting her something because he wants to make her happy. Sophia tells him that if the gift comes with genuine thoughts, Cecilia will be delighted. Yoki feels relieved and bids her farewell. As Yoki walks in town, his mood is good because he saw how loving a married couple can be. He starts imagining Cecilia as his wife. Yoki snaps back to reality, wondering why he pictured Cecilia in a modern setting from his past life. He heads to the Night Order's dorm to find Raven. When he finds his room, he finds Raven lying on the bed, rotting away. He tries to call for his attention, but Raven seems deaf to his calls. Raven immediately finds the energy to sit up when Yoki mentions Happiness' name. To fix Raven's confusion, Yoki shares that Happiness is his friend. He explains that part of the reason for his visit is because he wants to learn how they met. Raven explains that he met her during one of his patrols. He saw thugs cornering Happiness, so he decided to step in. The thugs threw insults and one tried to punch him, but Raven dodged. One of them recognized him, so they decided to flee. Raven was about to leave, but Happiness tugged on his cape. He spoke without thinking and belatedly let his voice out. He froze and covered his mouth, conscious of how he sounded. Happiness noticed right away. She told him his voice was nice. Embarrassed, Raven said his voice and his face didn't match, but Happiness insisted that she didn't care, and that she was jealous of what he had. She thanked him and left, but she stayed on his mind. Raven admits that Happiness' maid uniform looked familiar, which is why he ended up in the manor which Yoki indicates belongs to Cecilia's family. Raven asks how Yoki even knows Cecilia, so Yoki shares his story, though a made-up one to cover his demon identity. Raven is amazed that Yoki abandoned his homeland just to be with the person he loves. He praises Yoki, saying he's amazing for working hard as an adventurer to become a man worthy of her. Raven, however, admits he feels like he isn't getting anywhere with Happiness. Yoki tries to comfort him and says Happiness isn't good with men, and she has past trauma. Raven starts to believe his confession scared her. Yoki says that's not necessarily true, and that he shouldn't give up on her too early. He invites Raven to go out, and they end up visiting an accessory shop. Raven looks tense and says they feel out of place, but Yoki insists that it's fine. Yoki spots the necklace he wanted to give Cecilia before and buys it immediately. Then he notices Raven quietly looking for something for Happiness. They find an accessory with pink feathers, and Yoki says it would look good on her and that Raven should buy it. Raven hesitates and asks if a gift from a stranger would scare her. Yoki tells Raven that anyone would like a present as long as it is sincere, and adds that the design is something Happiness might like. Thinking about Happiness, Raven makes up his mind that if he gets the chance to see Happiness again, he'll give it to her. He writes on paper instead of speaking, so the cashier won't hear his voice when he buys the accessory. McKenna spots them and immediately recognizes Yoki. She approaches them and makes fun of their presence in an accessory shop meant for girls. Yoki gets defensive before proudly declaring they are there to buy presents for the ones they love, which earns him a hush motion from Raven. McKenna grins mischievously as she tries to coax Raven into admitting who he likes, but Raven only avoids eye contact with her. McKenna quickly understands why he isn't speaking to her is because she had made fun of him when they first met. The remorse on her face makes Yoki surprised that she acknowledges her mistakes. Soon, people in the shop start recognizing McKenna and Raven. McKenna suggests they move somewhere else so they can talk more. At a restaurant, McKenna complains that they're not even talking since they keep eating to evade her. To get Yoki to start talking, she casually mentions Cecilia. At the mere mention of her name, Yoki immediately begins sharing his status with her. He admits that they technically are not dating since Cecilia is always busy and has to deal with several proposals. He shares that he is aware Yuga had recently gotten rejected by her. McKenna explains that it's only natural for Cecilia to reject Yuga because all Yuga does is anger her. McKenna starts listing several instances where Yuga had annoyed them. She also points out that because Yuga is popular, he often causes trouble for the party. McKenna recalls a past journey where Yuga insisted on staying the night for his fangirls and Cecilia shut the suggestion down. McKenna warns Yoki that Cecilia doesn't tolerate men who treat women carelessly, and it's dangerous to piss her off. McKenna turns the conversation to Raven, but Yoki cuts in and says he'll protect Raven's pure love. McKenna snaps that she shouldn't be treated like a villain since she wants to help Raven too. McKenna says she understands when people want to talk about love. Raven wonders if she has a relationship issue. McKenna denies it at first, but Raven points out that Yoki is dependable when it comes to these things. After a pause, McKenna finally admits what's been weighing on her. She thinks Yuga must hate her now because of something that happened. Yoki braces himself since the topic seems heavy. McKenna explains that it started during their repeated defeats at the Demon Lord's castle. Yoki already knows, but he forces himself to act clueless. She says they weren't losing to the Demon Lord, but to the demon guarding the middle section. Every time they lost, the party got dragged back to the nearest human village and were even healed. But they kept lying to the villagers, claiming they withdrew from the middle section so they could prepare themselves for their standoff with the Demon Lord. They didn't want the villagers to know they lost to a guard because it would be humiliating for the party and Yuga. They kept getting defeated for a month and the village provisions started running low. When things got desperate, the demon offered the condition to leave Cecilia behind. McKenna was the one who persuaded the party to accept it. She believes that's why Yuga hates her for it. Raven, using his voice, tells Yoki not to blame McKenna because he did not refuse the offer. Yoki asks if McKenna ever told Cecilia how she felt. McKenna shakes her head, believing asking for forgiveness feels too cheeky. Yoki persuades her to do it, and McKenna eventually agrees because the party really matters to her. They watch McKenna leave, and Raven expresses he doesn't want to end things here. He gathers the courage and announces he will go see Happiness again. They end up visiting Cecilia's manor, and Duke spots them and greets Yoki. He doesn't recognize Raven, so Yoki introduces him. Duke finds out that Raven is the one who confessed to Cecilia. Not liking his presence or how he refuses to talk, Duke doesn't take too kindly to him, refusing to hand over Happiness. Yoki tries to explain that Duke is only protected because he knew Happiness for a long time. Despite Yoki's attempt to calm him down, Duke continues to demand that Raven leave Happiness alone. Raven finally talks and admits that he doesn't know much about happiness. Duke is baffled by his answer, because a man would usually declare that he will protect the ones he loves. However, Raven shakes his head and says it isn't like him to say such things. The answer surprises Duke, and they soon see happiness at the side. Instead of acting harshly, Duke pushes Raven forward and tells him he should say what he wants to her. When Yoki gives him an unsure look, Duke admits he was only testing Raven, and it should be happiness who chooses who she wants to be with. Raven approaches her and apologizes for confessing so suddenly. He then shyly holds up his present and nervously asks her to be his friend. Happiness takes the bag and says that she wouldn't mind being friends with him. Seek tries to snap Yoki out of this slump, insisting that they go to Cecilia's house because he is bored. However, since Cecilia isn't there, Yoki refuses to leave his bed. As he continues to rot away, Yoki realizes that it's already been a week since he last saw her. Apparently, everyone from the hero's party has been busy. Cecilia was assigned to travel to various villages to heal wounded individuals. Raven and McKenna are occupied as well, as they now serve as the heads of their respective organizations. Meanwhile, Yuga is acting as a diplomat while also being tasked with defeating high-level demons around the kingdom. He admits to himself that he feels guilty that the party has become so busy that they needed to split up, and also notes how their relationship has strained. He knows part of the reason is because he allowed them to defeat the demon lord, so he wishes there was something he could do to repay them. Seek eventually grows impatient and jumps onto Yoki's torso. He complains and says he wishes Duke had stayed instead of agreeing to become a knight. Suddenly, Happiness enters the room and informs them that Cecilia will be returning in the afternoon. This instantly lifts Yoki's spirits. It means he'll finally have the chance to give her the necklace he bought. Before heading to the manor, Yoki decides to kill some time in town. A mysterious fortune teller stops him and warns that he'll have an unlucky day. Yoki refuses to believe her and continues on his way. To him, being able to see Cecilia again is more than enough to make the day worthwhile. When he enters his usual bakery, he's greeted by a muscular man wearing a frilly apron. Yoki wonders what happened to the shop's usual assistant, only for the man to reveal that he's actually her brother. Yoki orders some cupcakes, but they're enthusiastically shoved into his arms. He leaves the bakery a little shaken and slightly disappointed to find that the cupcakes ended up crushed. He takes a bite anyway and is relieved to find that they still taste just as delicious as ever. However, his luck takes another turn when he accidentally bumps into another tall, muscular man on the street, earning him an angry glare. Thankfully, he comes out of the encounter unscathed. Moments later, he nearly steps on some dog droppings, making him start to think that maybe today really is unlucky. Suddenly, a child bumps into him. Yoki manages to catch the child, but the skewer the kid was holding slips from his hand and falls to the ground. The child begins to cry over the lost food, so Yoki buys him 2 skewers to make up for it. After the child leaves happily, Yoki realizes he's fallen victim to a pickpocket. Using his magic to strengthen his legs, Yoki begins his chase. This allows him to easily catch up to the pickpocket, whom he knocks out with a powerful kick. He retrieves his bag of coins, but suddenly Yuga appears and points his sword at Yoki, accusing him of being the thief. Yoki tries to explain the situation, but Yuga refuses to listen and repeatedly swings his sword at him. But his bag gets sliced open. He attempts to remove himself from the situation, only to be blocked by several knights. Yuga cuts off his other escape route, and Yoki begins to believe that today truly is the worst day of his life as a human. He later finds himself handcuffed in a dungeon, feeling depressed over everything that has happened. Duke eventually shows up and teases him, joking that Yoki must be craving a solitary life again since Cecilia has been ignoring him. Yoki tries to argue back, but Duke simply smiles in understanding. He reassures Yoki that Raven is already working to clear his name. Yoki feels relieved, but he notices that Duke doesn't refer to Raven as his superior. Duke casually responds that the only person he considers his superior is Yoki. However, he adds that he does call Raven Commander when they're out in public. Their conversation is interrupted by Irene, who arrives to remind Duke that he has training to attend. Yoki realizes that Irene is an elf, while Duke asks her for the dungeon key, explaining that Raven has already proven Yoki's innocence. Irene happily hands over the key, confirming that Yoki has been cleared of all charges. She then turns her attention to him and mentions that Yuga would like to personally apologize for the misunderstanding. Yoki later meets Yuga and Raven at a restaurant where a generous spread of food is laid out before them. Yuga enthusiastically welcomes him and urges him to eat, his overwhelming brightness nearly blinding Yoki. They quickly clean their plates, and Yoki thanks Yuga for the meal. Yuga then shares that Raven thoroughly scolded him for his mistake. He recalls seeing Yoki around town with Cecilia before and asks about Yoki's true relationship with her. Yoki nervously answers that they're just friends. Yuga feels relieved and then asks Yoki if it would be possible for him to give some advice on how to get closer to Cecilia. Yoki's eye twitches as Yuga is essentially his rival when it comes to earning Cecilia's affection. Still, he decides to tell Yuga to seek advice from someone who has known Cecilia longer, since he himself only became friends with her recently. Raven writes that he can't do that, which causes Yuga to insist that Raven should speak freely and not worry about his voice. Yoki realizes just how insensitive Yuga can be toward his party members. Raven, still refusing to talk, suggests that Yuga try speaking with Mikana instead. Yuga immediately refuses, claiming that Mikana hates Cecilia. Surprised, Yoki asks if Mikana ever said that herself. Yuga reveals that Mikana had once abandoned Cecilia during a battle. Yoki and Raven quickly realize that Yuga is referring to the fight against Yoki's demon self. Yoki's expression hardens as he tells Yuga that it wasn't Mikana's fault, nor was she in the wrong at that moment. Yoki explains that it was the demon who proposed the deal and that Mikana knew they needed to proceed with defeating the Demon King before they ran out of provisions. Even so, Yuga refuses to accept that Mikana wasn't at fault. To him, if Mikana truly didn't hate Cecilia, then she never should have even considered the offer. No matter what Yoki says, Yuga continues to insist that Mikana is to blame. Because of this, Yoki decides to shift the blame onto Yuga instead. He tells him that the person who made the final decision to leave Cecilia behind was actually Yuga himself. Raven's eyes widen at this revelation, as it isn't common knowledge and Mikana never told Yoki about it. However, Yuga is far too deep in denial to notice Yoki's deliberate wording. He repeatedly insists that he wasn't the one who sentenced Cecilia to death, and that everything was Mikana's fault. Raven places a firm hand on Yuga's shoulder and gently motions for him to stop talking. Yuga finally begins to calm down, and Yoki tells him that he needs to properly face his mistakes. This causes Yuga to suddenly break down in tears, drawing the attention of the other restaurant guests. Yoki apologizes for being too harsh and tries to calm him down. After some time, Yuga regains his composure and reveals that he and Mikana have been friends since they were children. Among everyone in the party, Mikana is the one who has stayed by his side the longest. Realizing how terribly he has treated her, Yuga wonders what he can do to make things right. Yoki casually tells Yuga to let Mikana scold him like she usually does. He explains that when someone scolds you, it simply means they care about you. Encouraged by Yoki's words, Yuga decides to apologize to Mikana. However, he asks Yoki to come with him, admitting that he's actually scared. Yuga practically drags Yoki along to Mikana's house. Yoki and Raven are forced to wait outside, as Yuga honestly admits that he lacks the courage to go in alone if they aren't nearby. Inside the house, Yuga accidentally walks in on Mikana while she's changing, causing her to scream. Her voice can be heard outside, making Yoki and Raven worry slightly. Unbothered, Yuga grabs Mikana by the shoulders and begins his apology. At first, Mikana just wants him out of the room, but her feelings slowly begin to change as Yuga sincerely pours out how sorry he is. However, when he ends his apology by asking her to continue scolding him in the future, Mikana becomes irritated. She assumes this is some strange quirk of his that makes him want to be scolded, so she decides to teach him a lesson using her magic. Yoki quietly slips away, leaving Raven behind to handle the aftermath. Yoki rushes back into town and heads towards Cecilia's house. He passes the fortune teller again, but doesn't stop to listen. The fortune teller was just about to tell him that his luck had changed. Along the way, Yoki receives a bag of cupcakes from the bakery as an apology for the ones that were crushed earlier. Then he's surrounded by servants who apologize for the trouble their master caused him. The young boy's attendant also hands him a bag of skewers to make up for what happened. At last, Yoki arrives at Cecilia's manor and is brought to her room. It feels like months since he last saw her, and he happily shows her all the food he picked up along the way. Cecilia invites him to eat with her and says she'll prepare the tea. Yoki is surprised, as it's usually a servant's job, but Cecilia explains that she's been learning how to cook from Sophia. After they finish their meal, they suddenly hear Yuga's voice as he bursts into the room and immediately asks Cecilia to scold him. Mikana punches him out of the way and tells Cecilia that they actually came for a different reason. Standing beside them is Raven, and Mikana begins to apologize. Sensing that this is a matter for the hero's party, Yoki gives them some space to talk. The hero's party begins apologizing for the time they left Cecilia in the hands of the middle gatekeeper. Although Cecilia insists that she doesn't hold it against them, Mikana still believes they need to apologize as they had effectively abandoned her comrades. Cecilia, on the other hand, reasons that all of them risked their lives that day and that she also left them to face the Demon King without a healer in the party. Mikana suddenly recalls that day. After Yuga dealt the finishing blow, worry immediately overcame her. She was the first to sprint back to the middle floor, praying that Cecilia was still alive. To her surprise, she found Cecilia completely unharmed and running toward her as well. Relieved that Cecilia was safe, Mikana collapsed into her arms, having sustained heavy damage and exhausted all of her magic. Cecilia fondly remembers that Mikana was the first to reach her despite being badly injured. She is also grateful to the rest of the party, as they all kept their promise and rushed back for her. She tells them that, above all else, she is simply thankful that they all survived the ordeal. Eventually, the heroes' party's friendship is restored, and they begin smiling among themselves once more. Watching them, Yoki smiles as well, feeling that their bond has only grown stronger. After most of the heroes' party leaves, Yoki and Cecilia take a walk around the property. Cecilia quickly guesses that her party's sudden apologies had something to do with Yoki. Nervous, Yoki admits that he wanted to do something for them since he was the one who caused the rift in the first place. Cecilia smiles and tells him that she's happy he's getting along so well with her family and friends. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity, Yoki decides to give her his present. When Cecilia opens the box, she finds a familiar pendant inside. Yoki explains that he went back to retrieve it and hopes that Cecilia will accept it as a gift from him. When she does, Yoki suddenly breaks into tears and loudly expresses his gratitude for her accepting it. Cecilia can't help but think fondly of him, as her life has become happier since he decided to live among them. Elsewhere, a village is being raided by bandits. Just as the bandits are about to strike down the remaining villagers, a mysterious swordsman appears and effortlessly defeats them all. One day, Seek and Yoki ride in a carriage with Cecilia to assist her. Yoki grumbles about why he had to bring Seek along since he had been hoping to spend the day alone with Cecilia. Cecilia begins to apologize for dragging them along, but the movement of the carriage makes her feel sick. Seek quickly offers her a potion made by him, and after a few sips, she instantly feels better. Seek makes sure to rub it in Yoki's face that he's the more helpful one. Smiling at their bickering, Cecilia shares how grateful she is to have them with her. Both boys express how eagerly they want to help her with her job. They finally arrive at a destroyed village, where the village head is the first to greet them. While he recognizes Cecilia, he is uncertain about Seek and Yoki's presence, but relaxes once Cecilia explains that they are also healers. They are brought to the chapel where several villagers have taken refuge. Immediately, the trio begins treating the sick and injured. As Cecilia works, Yoki can't help but keep his eyes on her, admiring how kind and diligent she is. The village head notices and approaches him, commenting on how wonderful Cecilia is. He then realizes that no one was seriously harmed during the attack. The village head explains that a mysterious swordsman named Miller appeared and forced all the bandits to flee. Yoki's attention returns to Cecilia, who is clearly exhausted from healing so many people. He urges her to rest, but when she refuses, Yoki decides to cast a spell to make her sleep. The villagers are shocked when she suddenly collapses, but Yoki reassures them that she is merely asleep and that he needs somewhere to set her down. Moments later, Cecilia wakes up in bed and immediately pouts at Yoki. She then puts on a threatening expression, ready to scold him about consent. While Yoki apologizes for putting her to sleep, he insists he only did so because she was about to collapse from overexertion. Her expression softens, knowing that he is telling the truth, but she still makes him promise never to do it again. Yoki agrees, then informs her that he and Seek have already finished treating the remaining villagers. This brings a beautiful smile to her face, and Yoki can't help but fall in love with her all over again. The village head then enters the room and asks Cecilia if they can visit a girl named Teal who lives far from the village. He explains that Teal wasn't attacked, but she is weak and bedridden, so he is deeply worried about her. They immediately head to Teal's home and introduce themselves when they enter. Teal can barely speak as she begins coughing violently, so Seek quickly hands her some medicine. Teal looks at the potion uneasily, but Yoki reassures her that Seek is very skilled with medicine. She decides to drink it and is surprised by the immediate effects. She thanks them, then expresses her gratitude to the guardian angel, which she explains is the deity represented by the statue outside the village. Seek and Yoki are a bit skeptical, but Teal insists that the deity is a true miracle. She explains that she prayed to it and was left unharmed during the bandit raid. She also claims that the guardian angel once rescued her from a pack of wolves when she was 7 years old. As Cecilia and Yoki listen to her describe the deity's powers, they begin to suspect that something about it involves dark magic. However, Teal takes this as an insult toward her protector. To prove her point, she brings them to see the statue herself. The group stares at the statue with unease, as it is clearly a demon statue rather than that of an angel. Teal is about to defend it when another coughing fit overtakes her, forcing Cecilia to hurry her back home. Seek and Yoki stay behind, already recognizing the statue as Guy, a gargoyle from the Demon King's castle. Suddenly, Guy comes to life and launches an attack at Yoki. Seek swiftly subdues Guy and pins him to the ground. Seek is ready to strike again, but Yoki stops him, saying he wants to speak with Guy first. Guy is confused as to why Yoki didn't finish him off. Yoki apologizes for disturbing him and asks why he became the village's deity. Guy explains that he was originally created to guard a temple but was stolen by bandits. He happened to be on their wagon when they decided to attack the village. Seeing an opportunity to punish the bandits, he used his magic to drive them away, after which the villagers began worshipping him as their deity. Over time, however, the villagers gradually stopped believing in him, and only Teal continued to pray to him. When the bandits attacked again the previous day, Guy chose to hide and protect her. Realizing that Guy has no desire to harm humans, Yoki decides to leave him be. Before doing so, however, he quietly whispers something to Seek. By evening, only Cecilia and Yoki remain walking around as Seek has already decided to go home. In truth, Yoki had asked him to leave earlier. Cecilia notices that Yoki has gone quiet and asks if something is wrong. Yoki tells her that he feels it might be fine to leave Guy in the village. He explains that Guy has been behaving and hasn't shown any intention of harming the village. Cecilia suggests that they observe him a little longer before making a final decision. They continue their walk and fall back into silence. Yoki feels nervous beside her, realizing he has run out of things to talk about. Suddenly, Cecilia trips over a tree root, but Yoki quickly steadies her. It takes a moment for them to realize how close they are, but once they do, they immediately pull away from each other in embarrassment, and Yoki shyly tells her to be careful since it's dangerous at night. After recovering from the awkward moment, they continue their walk. Later, a villager rings the alarm bell, shouting that the bandits have returned. Before they can breach the gates, Yoki and the others are already there to greet them, though Seek is still half asleep. Yoki lets Seek handle the first few attacks, which surprises Cecilia, since Seek is far stronger than she expected. After a while, Yoki decides to join the fight, and Cecilia promises to support him. Yoki easily blasts the enemies away, even protecting Cecilia before any attack can reach her. Suddenly, they notice smoke rising from the direction where Guy is located. Yoki tells Seek to head there immediately. More bandits appear, but Yoki swiftly defeats them. Once they are all rounded up, the villagers celebrate, relieved that they are safe again. However, Yoki and Cecilia realize that Seek has not returned. They rush toward Guy's location and find Teal crying beside him while Seek is being lifted into the air by Miller. Upon seeing them, Miller kicks Seek aside and recognizes Cecilia. At the same time, Cecilia recognizes Miller as the hero of the Gallus Empire. Seek explains what happened before they arrived, explaining that Miller attacked Guy from behind while Guy was protecting Teal. Seek tried to help but was quickly overpowered. Miller then turns his attention back to Guy and Teal, calling Teal pathetic for defending a demon. Yoki tries to convince him to stop, but Miller declares that he will destroy both Teal and Guy. To stop him, Yoki attempts to launch a magic attack, but it fizzles out before it can even reach Miller. Cecilia shouts at Yoki to retreat, warning him that Miller's weapon is a special artificial demon-slaying sword capable of absorbing magic. Miller swings his blade and slices off Guy's arm and wing, nearly harming Teal in the process. Cecilia begs him to stop, arguing that if he injures a villager, it could spark a war between their kingdoms. Miller's expression suddenly turns maniacal, as the very idea of war excites him. He licks his sword, and Cecilia realizes that he cannot be reasoned with. He begins talking about how boring peaceful times have been, prompting Cecilia to declare that he has no pride as a hero. Determined to stop him, Yoki casts a small wind spell toward Miller, but it is effortlessly absorbed by his sword. He then promises to unleash something stronger and summons a small tornado, hurling it at Miller, yet it is absorbed once again. Miller mocks Yoki, calling him an idiot for relying only on magic that clearly won't work against his weapon. He advances while Yoki launches a barrage of spells at him. Guy and the others grow worried, fearing that Yoki might run out of magic. Yoki attempts more advanced magic, but it still appears to have no effect on Miller. He fires another long stream of magic, and Miller confidently raises his sword to absorb it, continuing to insult Yoki for being stubborn and only using magic. At the same time, Yoki begins to smirk, knowing that his plan is finally taking shape. Moments later, cracks start forming along Miller's sword. Yoki explains that the blade is artificial, meaning it can only contain a limited amount of magical energy before overloading. He pushes even more magic into it, and Miller is visibly stunned by the sheer amount of mana Yoki possesses. When the sword finally shatters, Yoki dashes forward, charging his fist with wind magic and punching Miller with full force, sending him crashing into a tree. Yoki taunts Miller for being too arrogant, but Miller merely flashes a sinister grin and fires a holy arrow at him, but the attack hurtles toward Guy instead. Teal throws herself in front of him, using her body as a shield. As she collapses, she smiles, glad that she was able to protect Guy. Miller laughs at the sight, clearly entertained. Yoki's anger flares as he vows to make Miller pay, but Miller distracts him by firing a magical arrow toward his group. Without hesitation, Yoki casts a barrier to protect everyone. Once the danger passes, they realize that Miller has escaped. Yoki feels his anger surge again, this time overwhelming him completely. He begins transforming back into his demon form, with his body contorting as his wings and horn grow from his body. However, Cecilia notices that he is far larger than before and doesn't seem like himself. Yoki glances at Cecilia for a moment before taking off into the air to hunt down Miller. Miller is fleeing while using magical items to heal himself. He spots Yoki in the sky but doesn't recognize him due to his altered demon appearance. Miller pulls out another demon-slaying sword, but Yoki is already right behind him. Yoki slams Miller to the ground with one hand and declares that Miller is responsible for cutting off Guy's arm and wing. Miller assumes that Yoki is a demon who owns Guy, but before he can say much, Yoki kicks him violently across the forest. Miller survives the blow, but Yoki instantly appears behind him again, punches him in the stomach, and lifts him into the air, intent on ending him. Miller mocks him, accusing him of enjoying tormenting others. Yoki's eyes widen as he remembers the way Cecilia looked at him earlier. Regaining his senses, he tells Miller that he isn't worth his time and drops him into the lake below. Meanwhile, the rest of the group returns to Teal's house. Cecilia waits outside for Yoki, worried that he won't return. He approaches her, already back in his human form, much to her relief. Cecilia notices blood forming on his forehead from where he tore out his horn. Yoki tries to brush it off, but Cecilia's eyes fill with tears at the sight. She gently heals him, then smiles and welcomes him back. Yoki blushes and answers that he is home. Later in the day, Teal tells them that she wants to go to Minerva so she can help Guy. Regular healing magic won't work, but she believes that there may be a way to heal his wounds in Minerva. Since demons aren't allowed in Minerva, Yoki uses earth magic to disguise Guy as a clay statue. They eventually return home. Teal is easily hired by Cilia, but when Yoki tries to leave Guy with her, she immediately refuses, not wanting an ugly statue in her home. Teal ends up crying because she is forced to be separated from Guy. One day, Teal is busy cleaning Guy in Yoki's room. When she asks where Yoki is, Guy mentions that he has already left to head to the castle. At the castle, Cecilia and Yoki meet King Daz to discuss the events that took place in Daka's village. Yoki initially thinks the king is full of himself, but Daz suddenly shifts to a relaxed tone and insists that they speak casually. However, his advisor, Sylvia, immediately scolds him for his improper conduct. As the king playfully argues with her, Yoki wonders if this is his true personality. Daz then acknowledges their accomplishments in defeating Miller and saving the village. It offers them a reward, but Cecilia politely declines. Daz then turns to Yoki and asks what he wants. With his usual dramatic flair, Yoki declares that what he desires is not something the king can give him. Daz is taken aback as he is not used to anyone saying he has nothing to offer. He tries to guess Yoki's wish, even asking if Yoki wants his throne. Yoki denies every suggestion until he finally blurts out that what he wants is Cecilia's love. The room falls into an awkward silence and Daz stares at him in bewilderment before bursting into good-hearted laughter. He admits that this truly is something he cannot grant. Yoki immediately becomes flustered, realizing he actually said it out loud. Moments later, they return to Cecilia's manor, where Yoki desperately begs for her forgiveness. Cecilia scolds him for confessing in such a public and inappropriate setting. Celia finds the situation amusing and declares that Yoki must reflect on his actions, banning him from seeing Cecilia for an entire month. Yoki collapses in despair while Cecilia tries to convince Celia that the punishment is too harsh. Seeing through her daughter's hesitation, Celia realizes that Cecilia doesn't actually want Yoki gone for that long. She reduces the punishment to 2 weeks and orders Happiness to drag him out. Happiness drags him down the hallway, where they spot Seek sitting sadly in the garden. Yoki realizes that Seek must still feel guilty about his defeat against Miller and his inability to protect Teal and Guy. Sensing that Yoki is stalling, Happiness drags him the rest of the way. They return to his room, where Happiness drops him onto the floor beside his bed. Yoki greets Teal and Guy as he lands. Teal is surprised as it is the first time she has heard Guy's name, though she still wants to continue calling him her guardian angel. When she begins coughing again, Happiness urges her to go home. Guy bids her farewell, clearly worried about her health. Before leaving, Teal tells Guy that he is her source of strength. Afterward, Yoki collapses onto his bed to mope. He tells Guy that he is no longer allowed to see Cecilia for some time. Guy suggests that he should use this opportunity to make it up to her, since he now has the time. Yoki drags himself to the guild and demands that Clayman give him as much work as possible so he can become a man worthy of standing beside Cecilia. Half a month passes and Cecilia accidentally pours tea for two, a mistake that Celia immediately notices. To hide her eagerness to see Yoki again, Cecilia claims that the second cup was actually meant for Celia. Sophia then shares that Clayman told her Yoki has been keeping himself extremely busy with guild work. The mere thought of Yoki makes Cecilia blush and smile. That evening, when Yoki returns to his room, Guy notices that he seems to be in good spirits. Yoki happily shares that he will be able to see Cecilia again soon. Guy then decides that it's time to tell Yoki something he has been keeping to himself. He transforms back into his original form. Yoki's eyes widen when he sees that cracks have begun forming and pieces are starting to crumble away. Guy admits that he won't last much longer. Guy asks Yoki to look after Teal, deeply worried because she is also very sick. He explains that Teal relies on him heavily, and if he were to disappear, she might believe she is completely alone. Yoki promises to take care of Teal, but he also firmly declares that he will save Guy as well. He tells Guy that the room would feel lonely without him and says it would be great if Guy could remain there as a permanent fixture. Yoki leaves and meets up with Duke, who tells him that Guy might simply need to be fed a magical ore. Yoki is surprised to learn that this is common knowledge and decides to search for one immediately. When he reaches the exit, he suddenly realizes he has no idea where to find magical ore. Before he can figure out his next move, Cecilia comes running toward him with bad news. Apparently, Teal's condition has worsened. Sheet and Yoki rush to Teal's room, where Seek is busy mixing herbs for her. Seek explains that Teal has been fighting a fever that refuses to subside and her energy is rapidly draining. Cecilia sits by Teal's side, feeling helpless since magic cannot cure illness. Seek adds that they don't have enough herbs to sustain her, but obtaining dusk grass could greatly help her recovery. He explains that dusk grass does not grow anywhere near Minerva, so Yoki and Cecilia volunteer to search for it. Yoki expresses his gratitude towards Cecilia and mentions that he also needs to help Guy. Upon hearing Guy's name, Teal tries to get up in a panic, but Seek gently convinces her to lie back down. Seek tells Yoki that he will stay behind and protect Teal while they are gone. As they leave the room, Yoki asks Cecilia if she knows where they might find magical ore. Cecilia suggests that a merchant might have some, so they decide to head there, but they immediately run into Celia. Yoki and Cecilia hurriedly try to explain themselves, remembering that Yoki is still banned from seeing her. However, Celia tells them it's fine since they are doing this for Teal's sake. They visit the wealthy merchant, but when they ask about magical ore and dusk grass, he reveals that both are currently out of stock. Frustrated, Yoki groans just as Clayman enters the shop to pick up a request. When he sees Yoki, he tries to persuade him to take it, but Yoki refuses. Clayman reveals that he already knows about Yoki's situation. He explains that the request involves defeating a monster inside a mine where magical ore and dusk grass can be found and harvested. Realizing this is exactly what they need, Yoki and Cecilia accept the request. They depart with Clayman and Sophia using special transport, since the journey will take 2 days and they are already pressed for time. Sophia decides to tag along, feeling personally responsible for Teal's condition. Before heading to the mine, the group stops by a nearby town to rest and prepare for the battle ahead. Yoki is confused as to why they aren't going straight to the mine, so Clayman explains that the mana output in the area grows stronger in the evening, which also strengthens the monster they will be facing. The target is a rock eater, a creature that has been growing unusually powerful from consuming magical ores. Normally, rock eaters are not dangerous, but this one is mutated, becoming violent and resistant to magical attacks. On top of that, the client has requested that the rock eater's skin be retrieved without a single scratch, which is why Clayman has joined them. His strategy is to restrain the creature with magic rather than attack it directly. The next morning, the group prepares to set out, but Yoki and Cecilia are surprised to see that Sophia is still wearing her maid uniform. When asked why, Sophia explains that it is a special outfit and that Clayman likes seeing her in it, which only leaves Yoki and Cecilia confused. When they arrive at the cave, they venture inside and soon spot the rock eater feeding on magical ore. The moment it senses their presence, it begins hurling rocks at them. The group scrambles to dodge while Clayman uses his paper shikigami to break some of the projectiles into smaller pieces. Yoki attempts to attack, but his magic simply bounces off the creature. Clayman immediately scolds him, reminding him that they must not damage the skin. As the rock eater advances, Yoki and Cecilia cast restraining spells, but the creature easily breaks free. It slams its fist into the ground, forcing them to scatter. With their initial plan failing, they look to Clayman for the next move. He reveals a new plan that involves him protecting Sophia with his paper shikigami while she attacks the rock eater from the inside. Cecilia voices concern about how dangerous this is, but both Sophia and Clayman insist they are confident in their abilities. Trusting them, Yoki casts another restraining spell and Cecilia follows suit. In its fury, the rock eater opens its mouth, giving Clayman the chance to perform his spell and sends Sophia straight inside the creature to defeat it. With Sophia inside, the rock eater suddenly sheds portions of its skin, forming smaller versions of itself that immediately swarm toward the group. Yoki and Cecilia struggle to maintain their restraining spells as the miniature rock creatures close in. Realizing that binding alone won't be enough, Yoki shifts tactics and begins attacking the smaller monsters directly, only to find that his magic has no effect on them. He instead reinforces his fists with magic and starts fighting them physically. A few of the creatures manage to slip past him and rush toward Clayman. Clayman allows himself to take a blow, refusing to defend or evade because he must maintain absolute concentration to keep Sophia safe inside the rock eater. Seeing this, Yoki grows furious that Clayman is leaving himself completely exposed. Meanwhile, the rock eater finally breaks free from Yoki and Cecilia's spells. It raises its massive arm to strike Cecilia but freezes mid-attack. Clayman smirks, and moments later, the rock eater collapses to the ground. Sophia emerges from within it, still wrapped protectively in Clayman's paper shikigami. Clayman immediately rushes to her side and pulls her into a tight hug to make sure she's unharmed. Yoki and Cecilia both blush at the open display of affection, but Sophia quickly pushes Clayman away, reminding everyone that they still need to find dusk grass. Snapping back to their mission, Yoki and Cecilia dash deeper into the cave. After searching for a while, they finally discover the dusk grass they need for Teal. Once they exit the mine, Yoki insists on heading to Minerva immediately, but Clayman firmly refuses, stating that they will make their journey during daylight. That night, while Clayman sleeps, Yoki quietly slips out of their room. In the hallway, he finds Cecilia waiting for him with a small bag in hand, filled with dusk grass. She has already figured out that he plans to fly back alone so Teal and Guy can receive help as soon as possible. Surprised, Yoki admits she's right, and Cecilia simply smiles, saying she trusts him with the medicine. Yoki takes the bag, transforms into his demon form, and soars into the night sky toward Minerva. When he reaches his room, he finds Guy completely motionless. Panic grips him as he fears he may be too late. He shakes Guy desperately, yelling that he must wake up or he'll break Teal's heart. At the mention of Teal, Guy suddenly wakes and asks how she is doing. Yoki reassures him that she is stable since he has already delivered the herbs and Seek is watching over her. Relieved, Guy admits he initially doesn't want to take the magical ore, believing it won't save him. Furious, Yoki begins shoving the ore into his mouth, insisting he must try for Teal's sake. Remembering how much Teal depends on him, Guy finally accepts and consumes the magical ore. In an instant, his cracked stone body restores itself completely. Overwhelmed with emotion, Guy immediately takes off toward Teal's home. Teal is asleep when he arrives, but stirs when she senses him beside her bed. Seeing her improved condition, Guy feels a deep sense of relief. By the window, Yoki and Seek watch their reunion. Guy thanks Seek sincerely for protecting both Teal and him, even during the battle against Miller. Seek tears up, and Yoki congratulates him on a job well done. Teal notices that Guy's arm is fully healed, and he confirms that they no longer need to worry. That same evening, Yoki returns to the inn in time to ride back with Cecilia the next day. Exhausted, he falls asleep with his head resting in her lap. Cecilia smiles softly and murmurs that this is his reward. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss a new episode every week.